Hey everybody, it's Tripl-L here to talk about My Hero Academia chapter 390. Apologies, I'm just trying to get something set up here. I got the chapter number though. Hey everyone. So, this is the chapter Shoto Todoroki Rising. It's a Shoto chapter, but Dobby still has a pretty strong role here. Overall, just to give you my general opinion, I think this was all right ending for everything. At the end of the day, when it comes to the Todoroki family drama, what I expected was for all the Todoroki family to be involved. Now it was quite the journey because how are we going to get the civilians involved? But here we are. We got it. We got them in there. They got to be part of this whole thing. I do think that probably one of the weakest parts of the entire thing was having Dobby regress to being childlike and delirious when you had that situation with him not knowing what's going on. I do like that he returned to being spiteful because it's not fun when you take away a character's rational faculties because what makes Dobby interesting is his logic. Having to deal with childlike Dobby, you take away the difficulty, but it's a pros and cons situation. If you go and you deal with fully rational Dobby, this is going to take a while to deal with him, and that's why it's better to put this arbitrary countdown to it because you limit how long this is going to take. If this was a series about Endeavor, I think this would have gone on a lot longer. So overall, in a compromised world, I'm happy where Dobby ends up. I think that's all right. And overall, I think this was a good enough conclusion for where we are in Hero Academia. That's what I'm going to say about that. Is it my favorite thing in the world? No, not really. But yeah, no, overall, it could have been worse. That's really the big thing. And in terms of what I take away from all of this, what I'm really thinking is props to Horikoshi for all the things he did to get the Todoroki family there. I would say to not copy what he does. I think if you copy what he does, and if you're starting a manga in Shonen Jump, I don't think you're going to do really well because these are techniques of a manga with an install base. You shouldn't be doing it. If you're in a lesser magazine, though, I think you probably get away with it because lesser magazines are less rigid than Shonen Jump. So what we're gonna do for the chapter, I can already tell you, baseline, I think it's good enough given where we are, but I do think now we're gonna step into the critical part because really, if you guys want someone that's gonna be nice about the manga, you should go watch someone else. If you want someone that's gonna be a little bit critical and maybe wrong, depending on your own personal value system, that's what we're here for. What I'm gonna do. What I see in the chapter is that some spots are really, really good, but then there's some spots where just something feels weird, and I'm still trying to put still trying to put thoughts to it. But some spots feel weird. It feels like this is one of those chapters that really would do better if Hero Academia took 3 years to get to this point in terms of the in-story timeline, as opposed to doing everything in 1 year. Because it's a conclusion chapter, the author is trying to wrap things up. The theory makes sense. Yes, this is Shoto's conclusion, this is Dobby's conclusion, we should wrap things up. That makes sense, closure, basic theory. But I don't think the building blocks are fully there. And you can see that he was doing that because, you have the referencing to, what Shoto's been writing about in his letters and all that kind of stuff. And, to Shoto's stuff, the author does stay thematically appropriate to Shoto. The problem here is Shoto doesn't talk a lot. And this is a chapter where Shoto is ultimately talking about talking. So it's rough. It's rough. This is a hard one to, make work when Shoto's one of his comedic gags is that he doesn't understand what people are saying because he misinterprets everything as serious, right? So there's some things that gets thrown in there that just it feels like sometimes the situation being described is not the situation the readers see in the story. So I'm not going to do the page by page walkthrough immediately. I need to go through the bits that were just kind of odd to me. Talking about those, I also kind of wish Ida got to do more. That's one of the unfortunate things. I hope Ida gets to do I hope Ida gets to kick someone in the face, So I guess where we'll start is on this officially it's page 2 on Viz Media, I think. Yeah, page 4 on Viz Media. So, dear mom, I want to tell you something. In hopes of keeping up with my classmates, I'm making an effort to speak up and chat with them daily. That's all right. Nothing wrong with that. Shoto's an awkward boy, so he kind of needs to do that. All that talking has led to some conflict, but sometimes butting heads with others has led to a better understanding of how they think and feel. My friends care about more than them just themselves. They get mad and shed tears for the sake of others. Okay, so that last part doesn't really matter. Oh, let me finish this out because this is cute. That's how I want to be too. It's not easy, but I'm trying. Yeah. Okay, so like that bottom part, the beginning part, they're all really fine. It's really this top part. Sometimes butting heads with others has led to a better understanding of how they think and feel. And before that, all that talking has led to some conflict. Now, we do know that there has been conflict. And, like, you know, one of the spots that we see here is Suyu. But here's the thing. Class 1A is super friendly. The most volatile conflict in Class 1A is Bakugo versus Izuku. And otherwise, a lot of it's really Bakugo just being mean to everyone else. So what I'm really trying to say here is that, you know, when he says sometimes butting heads with others has led to understanding how they think and feel. Yeah, this is a good statement because this is true. Yeah, like butting heads with others, you know, you do understand how they think and feel, but you don't really see that in Class 1A. Class 1A is the kind of people that they just sit down and they talk about the very heavy thing of persecution. And you have Zen Mode Shoji leading the conversation. Ultimately, I just don't feel like Class 1A is a very good place to go to if you're looking for harmony through conflict, right? I don't think this is the place. And like right here, you can see they're pointing to the Suyu moment where she was crying and saying sorry. Like the Suyu moment, there isn't even a lot of conflict in that moment. Suyu just felt bad because she said something out of turn because she didn't realize what her friends were going to end up doing. There's not a lot of conflict there. So like when you look at even what he uses for the examples, yes, Bakugo, obviously, Bakugo right there. But when you see what he uses for the examples, there's just not a lot of conflict in Class 1A. They are, I don't think Shoto actually has a lot of experience dealing with conflict. Because these kids don't really butt heads very often. They butt heads with everyone else, technically. But you get what I'm saying? Like, for this one, it's just a little bit unfortunate. Just because Class A is very peaceful. Class A is the kind of class where, like, a good chunk of the characters have not interacted with Izuku and they still go after him. They don't have much disagreements about anything that's going on. Class 1A has always been very solid. There's not a lot of interclass strife in that particular class. I do think it's funny that if you look here, you can see Inasa there. Because Inasa is one of the most major conflicts that Shoto's ever had to deal with. But like it really reiterates that Class 1A is not the place to go to for conflict. So it's, that when you say like in hopes of keeping up with my classmates, it's like, yeah, no, man, like this doesn't really follow because that class was made to be way too friendly because like the author couldn't spend a lot of time fleshing out the conflicts between the class because people don't really like that. Now, the way that this like would be a little bit different is if we take school briefs into account. Although I would have to go and read school briefs, but yeah, my overall thing here is that the lesson of sometimes butting heads with others, not the strongest one that you have if you apply Class A. Like that isn't something that necessarily is going to come out of Class A. Class A with Shoji in there, they are way too calm. Like there's not a lot of conflict going on in there. Everyone's way too friendly. That said, again, it doesn't take away any of the thing that Shoto is saying because like Shoto's ultimately saying something that's super cute. And it's good for him. Like this is his thing. It just kind of reminds you like it's not really a super passionate rhetoric. And I think that's ultimately why, like, I think Horikoshi knows it too, because ultimately that's why Dabi and Shoto, they don't really talk in the final moments here. It's just screaming at each other. Actually, like, if we go to the next page, yeah, what else sums it up, right? It's just them screaming at each other, like, because Shoto's not good enough at talking to Dabi. Because Shoto can't break through Dabi's emotions, because Shoto's just not a good talker. So it just turns into screaming and punching. Yeah, you know, this is a very interesting like execution that you ultimately end up with, because like in some ways it's very consistent with what Shoto's about, but in some ways also it just doesn't follow the words. Shoto's the kind of guy that has the words in his head, but he just can't bring them out, and he can't speak very eloquently. We'll go into like the next set of pages, like this page right here, because I I did struggle a little bit understanding who exactly was saying what, and you know what? I'm thinking maybe it was just Dobby the entire time. So I just want to read this part. My origin as as Toya and Dobby. If it was so simple a thing, so that's simple because we had this wording used earlier, like that tells me it's kind of Dobby. If only we butted heads like this sooner. There are still arguments I want to have and things I want to say. I'm assuming that we transitioned over to Dobby for all these parts, but I'm not too sure. Like maybe it's Shoto saying there are still arguments I want to have and things I want to say. Like I can't really tell who's saying what here. Like I want to assume that if you look at Dobby's panels, they're all kind of staticky. So I want to assume that maybe these three are Dobby's, and there are still arguments I want to have and things I want to say. Maybe that is Shoto's because those two are overlaid on top of each other. Like Shoto is on top of these lines, and then Dobby's on top of those ones. Maybe that's how you have to read it. But okay, so Dobby's saying if only we clashed like this sooner. Now, the unfortunate thing here is that the reason they don't clash like this sooner is because Dobby was planning the most perfect thing. So it was like actually, again, this is a reflection of the entire story. It was simple, but Dobby had a freak out and ran away. So Dobby really is his own worst enemy. But that's consistent with the whole story because you look at Dobby's face and it's like, yeah, you really are your own worst enemy, right? So this line is like really tragic. Also, I'm not sure if you can tell, but I actually really like this part. My tone might not be giving that away. I actually really like this part because that's consistent with Dobby. With this stuff, there are still arguments I want to have and things I want to say. That makes sense because Shoto's not very good at talking. So of course he still wants to be able to say things. And then he ices Dobby with great glacial. I can't pronounce that word. Oh, that's weird. I saved the image in a weird way. Anyway, that next page doesn't really matter. Going to the next critical page. Actually, no, there's a bit at the end of that page. I know some readers feel a certain way about this tie. Our whole family is here. Well, not great, but maybe it's for the best, Shoto says. And then we go into like a really critical line. Because my great glacial ages alone might not have been enough to stop this. Alright. So, I think this is a super critical situation here. So you have to understand that what's going on here is like Horikoshi is putting in information. What he really wants to say here is the Todoroki family were critical in solving this situation. What he is like, let's put it in video game terms. Let's say Dobby has a barrier of 200. You have to like do 200 damage to break the barrier and get to Dobby, right? That's the game mechanic sometimes. Shoto will contribute 180 points of that damage, but he needs 20 other points. And where are those 20 points going to come from? The family, right? That's pretty much what Horikoshi is saying here in terms of like the difficulty presented here. Now, I do think he's kind of fighting a hard fight on that one. And it's not going to be a hard fight for most readers. Like if you're watching my videos, not going to be a hard fight for you. I'm talking about a hard fight for the casual reader who doesn't really go on YouTube and talk about the series that they like. Just because like the issue here is the magnitude of Dobby's thing. Like the light that was being produced, it looked like a giant ball of fire. People are saying like, don't look at Dobby, man. Like you're going to burn your eyes out. They didn't say that, but you know, they're telling people not to look at Dobby. It's a giant explosion. It's going to take out 5 kilometers, 10 kilometer diameter maybe. It's going to take out a lot of people, right? And then you have the 3 Todorokis. And like the thing is, in previous chapters, the Todorokis were drawn as being minuscule compared to this giant ball of heat and flame, right? So you have the visuals, which is like, bro, like these guys, what's going on at the backside of the sphere? Like these guys are just kind of holding on there. So you have them being dwarfed, and you have Shoto coming in, and Shoto's thing compared to theirs is like bro, look at that. Really? Like what is their contribution compared to Shoto's? Because like Shoto's blowing away like, well, we've seen what Shoto's Ice Age looks like. The guy takes out like blocks, city blocks in the ice. So overall, like the author is saying that because the visual reality that you see in the story doesn't really support it. So that's why he has to say it. That's why you go into this page and you have Shoto giving in all that context. Ever since round 1 back there, Toya's fire just kept growing. That's why he has to say it. because the visual reality doesn't really lead to it. Although, like, in my personal opinion, I think if you say that they were doing enough to just slow it down to give Shoto those extra moments, I think if you put the time component in there, say Dobby was going to blow up at 5 minutes, and make it super clear on this page, and then, like, yeah, they bought Shoto the extra 30 seconds, like, have a thing where Shoto says, like, oh, he ran out of time, they couldn't make it in time because, like, Shoto had to sprint for the last little bit there. I think that would have been good. I think that would have been another way of building in the family was valuable. But yeah, no, that's Horikoshi making sure that everyone knows that the Todorokis had to be there, otherwise this goes down to shit. Okay, so oh, Fuyumi. Cool. So, there's another spot here where it's like, I don't think this matches reality. So, oh, it's a little bit cut off on the screen, but he reached uncharted territory where I can't tread. Maybe I was never actually the masterpiece creation. Bro, if reaching uncharted territory lets you look like that, it's not worth it. This is called the deal with the devil. You want to call this a masterpiece creation? So, like, this is like, no, this is stupid rhetoric. No. No, that's just like something for Shoto to say. No, you gotta, like, we gotta talk about your value system here. That is not a masterpiece creation. The masterpiece, anyone can break their body. Anyone can go past their limits and tear apart their body. Anyone can do that. The masterpiece is the one that's able to reach high levels without breaking their body. You want, if we're gonna quantify this based on, like, places you can't tread, Shoto is able to do a freaking Ice Age attack here, okay? Dobby can't do that. What are we talking about? Are we just talking about, okay, like, oh yeah, sure, Dobby can hit a new level of heat that no one ever has done before. He must be a masterpiece, ignoring the fact that he turns into a mummy in the process. No, I feel like Shoto doesn't understand the meaning of a masterpiece creation. But going on, like, a very critical note, does the author expect you to see what Shoto is saying? Maybe I was actually never the masterpiece creation because Dobby reached territory where I can't tread. Like, is the author expecting us to say, Shoto, I think you're a little bit wrong there? Or is he expecting us to go along with it? Maybe he's expecting us to go along with it. Or maybe, like, he's expecting us to think that Shoto's delirious. But, like, really what it is just giving Dobby one accolade, right? That's really what it comes down to. It's like giving Dobby his props. That's what it is. The mechanism is you need to celebrate Dobby in some way, but, like, critically, I don't think that line works. I think that line is a little bit brain dead. Now, after that, like, that's actually the last line that I think was critically weird. Everything else after that I think is really, really good. We have Dobby return now that he's been cooled off to being just a hateful bastard, which I think is really, really good. I mean, at this point, you might as well just commit to what you are, right? We have an interesting observation here. He's freezing from the inside. I do wonder how exactly that works. Is it because of, like, Dobby's power? Is it freezing him from the inside to preserve him, or is it because of Shoto's phosphor? I'm not too sure on that one. We do see that it looks like you can see surprised that Dobby's eyeball is still in there, in all honesty. I'm surprised it didn't evaporate, but, like, heat resistance, I guess, is what you could call it. Anyway, if there's ever someone in need of the Eri treatment, it's probably there. Regardless, the dialogue here is, like, really good. I think it was interesting. I like the level of futility with, well, what now from Natsu. I like how Endeavor's dragging his body over to Dobby. I think overall that spot's really good. Then we go into, like, the hate you all, hate you dad, hate the family too, and Endeavor accepting it. I think we've all seen this kind of technique before where someone just lets another person, like, shoot out all the venom. At the end of the day, like, we know with Dobby's thoughts that he came to a realization about how simple everything was, like, confronting his family. And, really, it comes back to that moment in the past. If Dobby didn't run away and instead confronted his family, maybe things would have been different. Overall, I really like the idea of it. I do kind of wish we had more closure with Endeavor. And then, like, the author does try to push it here. You know, you have him saying, Ray, I'm sorry for taking you to breaking point. Sorry for Yumi for leaving you to pick up the pieces. Not so sorry for neglecting you like I did. And Shoto, just getting a regular sorry. Just kind of wish we got a little bit more there. I think overall, like, Dobby, like, unleashing the venom, I think is really good. I think I would have wanted more of Endeavor receiving the venom. instead of just going over to Toga. But also, mind you, Horikoshi is not well, because we're still dealing with very short chapters, right? So, like, again, in a compromised world and a compromised manga, like, this is, again, still very above average for a Shonen Jump manga. Shonen Jump Battle Shonen. Like, I really don't want to take that away from Horikoshi. This is really good. We go back to Toga, so I'm assuming we're going to be dealing with Ochako. Honestly, Ochako has such plot armor because all those Twices have knives on them. She could be stabbed multiple times over. She is so lucky those Twices are not pulling out knives on them. Anyway, you have Toga wondering if Dobby smiled. I do think it's really, really funny that Toga was literally minutes away from dying in a giant ball of flame. I kind of wish there was more acknowledgement of how much of a bastard Dobby is to people that he is allied with. But yeah, now we kind of had to skip to just the critical spots. So let me just go back to the beginning for Ida here. So I'm very sad that Ida ultimately broke down just doing a speed feat. I hope he gets Eri healed so that he can go and like do some final fights kind of thing, or just even kicking something in the face would be cool. I'm kind of sad there, but during this moment, just want to give them the accolade that they did break sound barrier to get there. Now, Shoto activates Phosphor, so I'm assuming Phosphor is what gave it the extra boost, and again, we see the giant ball of flame over there, or the giant ball of heat. Again, so, like, only 3 tiny people were doing something about that. We have transonic speed, can't believe it, using regenerating ice constructs to reduce drag and creating a layer of heated air to reduce friction. I checked the science on that one because I'm not too, like, friction I'm not very good at. But yeah, no, that's correct, the hot air moves away, so like, yeah, less friction, so that pretty much worked out in the science arena. Battle Shonen and Science, man. On this page, we have another thing about Tsukachi just really saying like, oh yeah, All Might was right to believe in them. And of course, you have, thanks to you, I'm becoming who I want to be. I think that was a really good line for Ida there. So overall, Ida's involvement in this, he got Shoto close enough, and then Shoto sprints the rest of the way there from the way the manga reads. Again, I do kind of wish we could have gotten more. Like a speed feat, you know, again, I wish for more from Ida. Hopefully he gets a little bit more later. We'll have to see. But hitting that, hitting transonic speed as fast as a fighter jet was pretty cool. There's not really much else to do. One thing for Ida that's worth pointing out is that Ida doesn't really have a villain the way that Shoto and Endeavor do. So this is kind of what happens in Hero Academia when you don't have a villain. You don't have someone to bounce rhetoric off of. You don't have your fated fight. So that's why he kind of ends up in this position. I know people were saying that Gashly and Ida would be a thing because Ida is mentioned in this, and Ida is mentioned in the story. But yeah, no, like, Ida's villain really is Stain. But Stain's not an idiot the way that Dobby is, right? So Stain's not going to pick a fight with people trying to be good people. So that's ultimately why you end up in this position. They just, if a Hero Academia character doesn't have a villain, they're just not going to be able to work very well unless Horikoshi does something else. Like when it comes to some of the other characters, like when you look at Tokoyami and Jiro, you see what the solution was. The solution was to put them up against All for One, who is technically everyone's villain. And I think it really did work. Honestly, like, maybe one of the best things to do would have been to put the Class 1A kids up against All for One in some way, like just force it. That would have been an interesting way of getting some of them to do stuff. Like Sato, Ojiro, what are those guys going to do? Like, who is their villain going to be? You're not going to really get really impressive rhetoric out of these people if you don't have them fighting good villains. And I think that that's ultimately why Horikoshi was smart. Because he centered a lot of Ida's rhetoric around, my power is there for helping lost kids. And like, what he pretty much did was he made Ida's villain Ida's own flaws. That's who Ida's villain is in this situation. So props to Horikoshi for keeping it consistent, but that's kind of just what he has to do when you don't have a strong villain on the opposite side. Ida's biggest enemy is himself, or like maybe his interpretation of himself. That's why like his final word is like, thanks to you, I'm becoming who I want to be, because he's vanquishing his inner inferiority, whatever you want to call it. Again, like one thing that you can appreciate, like right with Horikoshi, is that he understands the theory of a story. He understands the idea of conclusion. He understands the role of obstacles in a story. He understands like the conflicts of like man versus man versus himself, and man versus God. He understands those fundamentals, and that's why you have so much thought being put into these little spots here and there. Uh, like he 100% has enough like he has enough of a handle of the theory to be able to force conclusion, even though it might not be the most optimal conclusion. He knows how to like force a conclusion. um like he pretty much like he's definitely the kind of person that you would want as your editor. If you have a compromised story, you're getting canceled and you need to wrap up things, he's definitely got technical knowledge to be able to do that. And this is like one final note. Like usually, when it comes to high technical knowledge with writing stories, it really does like that technical knowledge really is most valuable when you have to end something and you're being canceled by external factors. Like that's really where the technical knowledge comes in, like hardcore. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the review. Um, Overall, the theme of the chapter is this is good considering what we got, and I do really adore Dobby's ending point on this one. I hope there's more, but we'll have to see. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for watching, and until next time, I hope you have an absolutely great day.